Hello and welcome to the Ouya, which, if you have not heard of it before, this was a Kickstarter project. Started a while back. If I remember correctly, it is the most successful Kickstarter project of all time. The project was to produce this, which is the Ouya. This is a retail version, which apparently is updated a little better from the version they gave to the backers. Comes with a console and a controller, HDMI cable, and power adapter, as well as some batteries. Of course, I already have the batteries in mind, as well as this booklet, which tells you how to set everything up in a few languages, which is a single page, surprisingly. Or maybe not surprisingly, I don't know. On the back of the device, we have the power adapter, mini USB, a regular USB, Ethernet, and HDMI port. One problem I noted is that the HDMI port and the USB port are really close to each other, so if you have a thick USB something, you can't really use that. If you're going to use a USB hub to extend the number of ports, make sure you get a powered USB hub, because else it will not be able to support it. Some users have complained that when plugging in the various cables into the back, that because of the small nature of the device, the cables can pull it back and make it not sit properly. Of course, that's not really a big issue if you think about it, and personally I found that using the HDMI cable it is supplied with and the power and everything, if you just use what it comes with, you have no problems. Once plugging in a few other things, such as I was plugging in a mini USB to my computer for development and a USB stick, it wanted to tip a little bit, but as long as I didn't touch it, it was fine. The controller is a bit cheap. It costs $50, but it feels like a $15 or $20 controller. The bumpers and triggers, they almost squeak, sorta, and I imagine after enough use they will start to squeak. The D-pad, I'm told, is very shitty. Personally, I'm fine with it. I don't have any problem with it, and the controller itself fits in my hands perfectly. But I don't know how I compare to others. So apparently it's shit. I personally like the analog sticks. I think they're very nice, but apparently some people are not happy with them. And I'm also told that these buttons like to stick, but I have had no issues with them sticking at all. This is the menu button, also the power button. It has 4 LEDs that tell you your connection status. As you can see, it's trying to find this thing, which of course isn't on. And it also tells you which player you are. This up here is a touchpad, actually, which unfortunately you can't tell quite where the touchpad begins and ends, and by default it is way too sensitive. Luckily there is a setting, if you go to Manage, System, Advanced, Language and Inputs, Sensitivity, that controls that, and setting it to about halfway fixes all those issues, although it does make it a bit slower, but of course you can get used to it very quickly. That also controls the sensitivity for the mouse, which again, the default sensitivity is too high for plugging in a mouse, but about halfway makes it good. The buttons on the controller are, of course, the Ouya buttons, the D-pad, left and right analog stick, which you can click in for R3 and L3, and then there's L1 and L2 bumpers and triggers, whatever you want to call them. To replace the batteries, you pull off these side panels, which are held on by magnets, and it's 2 AA batteries, one on each side. I'm not going to bother to pull off the other side, because I've done that way too many times, failing to make this video already. Luckily, you don't have to get these controllers if you don't want them because they're bad. You can use a PS3 or Xbox 360 controller, or so I am told. Unfortunately, I'm also told that when using those, you may have some issues with them working with certain games. Apparently, the developer has to support the option of a PS3 controller or an Xbox 360 controller. Personally, I find that stupid, since you could simply remap the controls to act like an Ouya controller when you plug it in. I mean, sure, you may not be able to remap the touchpad to anything, but the rest of it is fine, and I don't think many developers are even using this touchpad right now. For the PS3 controller, sorry I can't show you one, apparently you just have to plug it into the device, which side is it? There we go. Plug it in once, and then it pairs, and you can unplug it and use it wirelessly. For the Xbox 360 controller, I'm told you have to buy the 4PC adapter that plugs into USB and plug it in and use that. I'm told one complaint about it is that HDCP is enabled on the HDMI port and that you can't record game output or anything. And apparently there's normally an option in Android to disable this, but it's not disabled. However, I have also been told that it is disabled by default, and so I don't quite know. I will find out when I get a game capture device, which I will be soon. As for internet, besides the Ethernet connection on the back, it does have built-in Wi-Fi, which is a bit fiddly with the default firmware it ships with. However, after an update, it works perfectly fine. The internet is not required except for setup and shopping the store or, particular games that might require it. It comes with 8 gigabytes, which I am told is an SD card inside there that you can replace if you have a hex screwdriver and can get in there and do that. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure how easy it is to replace, but you have 8 gigabytes. You don't actually have 8 gigabytes. You have 5.6 gigabytes. Actually, you have 5 gigabytes. It reserves about 600 megabytes for firmware updates, because else if you fill it up too high, you can't upgrade the firmware, which would kind of suck. Remember that when installing a game, you need roughly double the space of the game, because it has to download an APK, which is a compressed version of the software that then must be uncompressed before the APK can be deleted. So that means if you have a half a gigabyte game, you need about 1.5 gigabytes to install it. Half a gig for the game, half a gig for the compressed version of the game, half a gig for the reserved space. Luckily, you will be able to plug in things into the USB port to get more space. Unfortunately, that doesn't work just yet, or at least it has not worked with the flash drive I tried. I'm told that they do not have support for such things just yet, but they're working on it, along with friends list, achievements, etc., etc. It has very many features missing that I think should have been there on launch. I think they rushed it a bit more than they should have, but that's just me. It will be getting more features later. I would call this like an early beta version. The hardware is, of course, not final revision. They intend to update it each year, but, it's the final for the first revision. However, the software, they are working on it. As for how it runs and the interfaces and such, it runs smoothly 99% of the time. I'm not going to show you that right now, because if I were to show you that right now, it would just be crappy camera pointed at a screen, which you don't want. And I'm getting a game capture device, which should work with this. Specifically, I'm getting an Elgato, which I'm told Elgatos work with it regardless of HDCP, which is fishy. I don't know. We'll see. Once I get the game capture device, I'll make a part 2 to this video talking about the software side of things. But for now, here's this. Personally, I would recommend avoiding it for a week or two, and then getting it. There's been some issues with shipping, and a lot of backers have apparently not received their units yet, even though I bought this retail version in a shop, which is kind of a jit, because, if you pre-ordered it and if you backed it on Kickstarter and you were told you were going to get it before some schmuck like me, you should be able to get it.